The year that we cut is the future year. And again, because we're trying to balance out the time that will take to do this new part with the time that it takes to do the application. So hopefully it will still just take you the same amount of time it's always taken you in the past. We've just switched out some different things. But reading the instructions online will really help you, even though it feels like it takes time to do that. I always encourage, and I used to do this as a grant writer, start as early as possible. What I encourage is, like right now, like go over the guidelines. They're already online, even though the application is not open yet. And the main reason why it's not open yet is because the company that we go through for the online system, it's taking them longer to change the application so that you only have to submit 3 years of information, because without them doing the back-end work, you would have to literally fill in zeros for a year. It just seemed like a waste of time, so I'm trying to get them to cut that out so you can still submit and not have to submit that much information. But start early, like even if it's just reading the guidelines and just knowing like what all the pieces are, so that especially if there are parts of the application that you're going to need help from other people in your organization to get, like financial information, like event audience information, the racial equity piece, where you're going to need to talk with your board or other staff about. It's better to know that in advance so you can plan for that now, so that even if you are not able to actually put all those pieces together until closer to the deadline date, at least you've kind of put the asks out now and you kind of put into your calendar, like this is time that I can work on this application. If you start like the week of and you realize, oh crap, I'm gonna need like financial statements from my treasurer and they're out of the country for the next month, then you're gonna be scrambling and it'll be much more stressful. So the earlier you make those asks, the better. And I would always give, if I'm needing information from other people in my organization, give them a false deadline. Tell them you need it by like, June 1st or June 15th, so that, again, if they're late on getting stuff to you, you're not ending up scrambling at the last minute either. If you have questions, like I said, the online video will be available. As we get frequently asked questions, we'll keep updating the frequently asked questions sheet that we will post online. There's nothing there yet because this is the first workshop, so we usually develop it based on the questions that you pose to us. So always go back to the page that you'll have on one of these handouts when we go over that part. You'll go through the guidelines again, go through the instructions again, again, if you feel like you're spending too much time looking and you can't find the answer to something, do feel free to send me a quick email or a phone call and we'll try to respond as soon as we can. But unlike in the past, now it's more like I may not be able to respond for a couple of days, and if I am going to be out of the office, I will definitely try to make that clear in my out-of-office emails. So do ask as early as possible. If you ask the week of, and my philosophy is I always respond to things first come, first serve, both email and phone. So the earlier you email or call, the quicker I'll be able to respond to you. If you wait until the week of the deadline, I may have so many requests that are waiting and first come, first serve, I might not be able to get to yours. So just know that because of our limited capacity and the increase in applicants, that's become a real reality, and I hate to say that, but that is true. Save often. Our system does auto-save occasionally, but it is so random when it does that I've had people call me and there's a save button on the bottom of the screen. I click it frequently, and always before you go to the next page, click it, because if you go to the next page without clicking it and it didn't do an autosave of that page, all the information you just typed in will be gone. So do not do that to yourself. Always press save, more than you even think you need to. And then before you submit, do read over the application and just make sure that it actually looks and is what you intended it to. And try to submit your application before the deadline date, because what will happen when you press that submit button is any error or things that are missing will show up in red. And do make sure that you wait for it to completely submit and before you close out, because I've had some people press the submit button, we're so excited that they submitted that they just close out the program and they realize that later that it actually never submitted because Or they never saw the page that shows up that actually says, these are what you're missing. And of course, if you wait until the last minute to do that, there may be too many things that are missing or are in error, and it's 5 minutes before it's due, it's going to be too late. I have changed our philosophy in the office where even if you submit an incomplete application, though sometimes because what you have is so many things, it won't actually even submit. But if you've submitted something and it looks like it's fairly complete, I will often still have the panelists review it. But I will say that anything that's incomplete, the chances of getting funding will be next to nothing. The reason why I have the panelists still review it is because if you've put in the effort to put an application together, even if it is incomplete, the one thing you can benefit from is having people be able to give you some constructive advice on what might make your application stronger or what was strong about it, which will help you the next time you apply, whether for our office or anywhere else. So that is the service that I'm offering in exchange for you putting in the time to put in an application. So even if you're getting close and you know it's not perfect or whatever, I encourage you to at least submit what you've got. But know that the earlier you do that, the better it will be. And I've said it several times throughout, be transparent, really tell your story, really highlight who your organization is. As I said, the panelists have to read 200 applications, and we don't know, we might get more this time, right? That's a lot of applications to go through. Just imagine, that you're the 199th application that they're reading, and if you sound just like everybody else, it's not going to do you any good. So really tell your story. How does your organization make a difference? Really highlight the things that make you unique. And that if you have any specific examples to highlight what you're talking about, like, so someone's saying, like, we're the best we're the best arts organization that does environmental justice work in the city, right? And you may say that, and it sounds great, but if that's the only thing you say, the panelists are like, oh, well, how do we know that? But if you say, we're the best arts service organization that works on environmental justice in the city, and here's an example of a program we did last year and the impact that it had in really making a difference in terms of environmental justice and how art was a key way to do that, and you tell the story of that specific example, that's going to paint a picture and give the panelists something tangible to understand what it is that you do. If you say that we serve the Latino community in ways that go beyond just the arts and cultural program that we do, saying that is great and it may be true, but again, it's kind of generic. But if you, even though it has some specifics to it, but it's still really broad. But if you're able to back that up by saying, last year we were able to engage 200 Latino youth from throughout the state in this program in Seattle by doing this, this, and this, and through that their test scores in school improved by this much. That's something specific and tangible. Or even just talking about, like, we serve more senior citizens in the city who want to participate in playing musical instruments than any other organization. Saying that is one thing, but actually being able to say, like, literally 300 senior citizens participate in our program, and here's the demographics of them, here's the age range of them, this percentage actually live in retirement centers, that says something more tangible, right? So the more specific, using either data or specific examples is going to be much more to your benefit. And remember that, again, this is people that are your peers. They've been in your exact same shoes. Don't try to oversell them, and again, don't undersell yourself either. So be concise, be specific, be accurate. Don't try to say what you think they want to hear. Just talk genuinely about who you really are. And don't try to hide things or shove things under the table, because believe me, that actually sends up more red flags than anything else. Again, more than anything else, submit your application early. Diana, let me ask you, the one other thing that I do want to go through is kind of sort of the structure of the application, and whether you want to jump into your part first. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me do that first, and then maybe what we'll do is when I get to the structure that talks about the new piece, that's when you can jump in. So basically, our online application is made up of some different parts. When you go online, the bulk of the application will actually be online. And the only part that you will not submit online is possibly your work sample, if you have to submit one, and the racial equity assessment. So on the online thing, what you're going to find, and so for new people, this might be confusing. It's for anyone who's never applied to our programs before, and if you really aren't like any of our applications before, so this is all new to you. We are happy to set up an actual computer lab session. What we do is we try to, if there's a number of people who want that, we'll try to find a mutually agreeable date for a number of organizations and find a computer lab and do that together, because sometimes it's easier just to do it at computers. So I'm not going to go too much into depth into this here, but for anyone who has applied regularly before and wants a refresher on that, can also let me know that, and I can make that available to you. But basically, if you think of the online application as there is a generic profile section where you're basically going to tell the basic stuff that will be consistent no matter what program you apply to in our office. So as I said, there's a number of different programs, and there's several that you can apply to simultaneously. This section will always be the same regardless of which program you apply to. Your organization name, address, contact information, mission, history, that's the same. Once you have that set up in our system, you just go in and just kind of look in to make sure it's always up to date before you submit an application. Then there's a section which is kind of like what I call the filing cabinet of our online system, and this is where you're going to enter budget information, you're going to enter programmatic event information, you're going to enter staff information, board information, things like that, and it's broken up into sections. And think of it as a filing cabinet where literally there'll be a file folder online, so the online thing will be a link, but if you think of it the way it's tangible as like literally like a file folder, that's for staff, and you'll put all the staff information in that file folder. Then there'll be another link for board, and then you'll put all the information about your board in that file folder. There'll be another link for financial information, and so all your financial information will go in that file folder, and within that file folder, there'll actually be broken up by years, 2013 financial information, 14, 15. So really, if you picture it like a filing cabinet, then it makes a lot more sense. And so this is the global data section of the online thing. And basically, you're just filing different things that you can actually keep archived there. And then, and when you complete all that, the actual application itself is really simple, because the application will literally be, it will pull all the information that you've already filled in your profile automatically into the application. And then you just click. So it'll say financial information. Click which years you want to submit into this application. You'll just click on the ones that you've already completed in the filing cabinet. So the main thing with, if you're the first time doing this application, and even those of you who've done it before, as long as you first think of, I've got to first make sure that I've got all my files in my file folders. So go through the file folders and make sure that you've got your financial statements in there for each year, you've got your staff and board and event program information for each year. Take care of all that first. All your file folders are filled out and complete. Then when you go to the application, it's literally just click, click, click. I want to include this information, this board list, this year, and then the application is pretty much done. The only thing that takes a little bit more time in the application is the narrative section. That's really the bulk and the heart of the application. Everything else is literally clicking boxes as long as your file folders are complete. So the narrative section, and again, this is in your guidelines, so I'm not going to go too deeply into it because you've kind of covered a lot of it already. But it just really is asking you what are your organization's most significant accomplishments in the last 2 years? How do you define the community that you serve and work with? And what is it that makes your organization unique compared to all the other arts organizations in the city? And what do you hope to accomplish in your next 2 years? So it's really talking about highlighting what things you've done that's been great, talking about who you are in relation to your community, and talking about what makes you unique, and then what you hope to do in the near future. And that is really all the narrative section is. Make it as specific to your organization as possible. And like I said, that's really the heart of the application itself. Let's see, I'm gonna just, the only other thing that I should let you know is that with the work sample section, only organizations who are not currently funded, so any of you who are currently, which almost seems like this side of the table, but those of you who are currently funded, you do not have to submit a work sample, okay? And for anyone who may have been funded in the past but is not currently funded, you do have to submit a new work sample. Anyone who's never applied for the spending program before also has to submit a work sample. The work sample really is what can showcase your organization's programmatic activity that's arts and culture related in the best way. So if you're a theater organization, probably a video of, it's a 3 to 5 minute video of work that you've done, great. If you do music, then probably a CD and now we take everything by links too, so if you've got a YouTube thing, if you've got an MP3 file, or if you've got things that are already online for your websites, all we need is the link, and it's really easy, much easier now because of that. If you are a literary organization, then maybe it's like sending some samples of some of the work that you've published or printed. So really think about your arts discipline and what would be the best way to represent that. But I'm not going to go too far deeply into this one because only new organizations need to submit this. But if you do have questions about what might best represent your organization, you can feel free to contact us. What I do know from panelist feedback, what does not work is panelists do not like promo videos of your organization. And I know a lot of arts organizations spend a lot of time maybe creating a promo video that you do on YouTube where it kind of like interviews different people in your organization and what people feel about your organization, and then it shows maybe 10 different events, 10 seconds each. They kind of are too much of a little bit of everything for panelists. They'd really rather get to know your art form or your programmatic activity in a deeper way. So for them, it's much more effective to, if you're a music organization, maybe hearing 1 minute of one performance and another minute of another performance. Because music, a minute is a pretty decent sample of you don't have to do, or if it's easier, you can do 3.5 minutes of a whole musical number. And then maybe 2 minutes of something else to show that you have range. For a theater organization, it's much better to just show 5 minutes of one performance straight through, a strong 5 minutes in that performance, than trying to show 5 clips, 30 seconds each, and them trying to figure out what the story or what it's even about, right? If it's a festival, maybe trying to, what is the heart of this festival that makes it that's arts and culture related, that has impact on people, and how you can best kind of showcase that. Festival, so get creative. We're all arts organizations, so really get creative on it. But again, they're really looking for what kind of shows the quality, the merit of the work that you do. And then there is a support material. We do ask for 2 supporting documents from everyone. The confusing thing about this, because of the structure of our online system, is the way to submit document attachments is, how can I preface this? There's a couple of documents, it's the board list, the staff list, and your 501c3 document. There's, at the very beginning of the application, there's certain documents that will automatically attach to the application. And it's pretty clear when it does that. The only 2 documents that do not have a place to attach in the application are these 2 supporting documents. And so you actually have to create them as PDFs or as a Word document, and it has to be, unfortunately, a DOC Word document, not a DOCX. And if that's confusing to you, the safest thing, make it a PDF. Now almost any program will convert things easily to PDF. And convert it to PDF, and then you can upload it. But the two supporting documents are either some sort of review, media coverage, blog coverage, something where someone outside of your immediate kind of entity. So if it's coming from a staff person or like a board person, it probably won't resonate as strongly as if it's coming from someone outside of your, like someone who comes to your events or someone, an artist who has benefited from the programs that you do. Some sort of reference letter is an option that you can have that really talks about the work that you do. It doesn't have to be one that's specifically addressed to us. Maybe someone sent you, they went to one of your programs and was so impressed that they wrote this great letter and it's addressed to your board president or something. That's fine. It doesn't have to be something that's specifically created for us. But some sort of letter that kind of it's a reference letter, a recommendation, something that talks about the impact of the work that you do or the quality of the programming that you do. That is one option. Another option is some sort of media coverage, review, a blog thing, post, something that again talks about the quality of work that you do or the impact that your program has in the community. And it could be either like two of one or two of the other or one of each, right? But it has to be two different documents. And there's some strategic ways, like if you do a wide variety of programming, maybe have each one talk about different programs that you do. Or if you serve a really diverse a community, maybe have it come from different people that represents the range of people that you serve. Really try to think through what would be the best two documents that can kind of highlight the work that you do. And so that is a supporting, what we mean when we say supporting documents is those two things. And again, it kind of goes into that in depth in the application itself, but if you have questions about that, we can take that at the end. And then the new thing that we talked about is the racial equity assessment. And with the racial equity assessment, Diane will talk about it more in depth in a sec, but what we're really looking for is you're going to type it up as a 2-page document. And for this one, you're just going to email it directly to me. And I will confirm if I've received it. So if you do not get a confirmation from me, definitely check to make sure that I received it. And the reason why we're having you email it is, as I said, we want to keep it separate from anything that the panelists see. If you submit it online, they will be able to see it. So do not submit this online. You can if you want, but we want to just keep it clean and that it not influence the panel in any way. And so that's the one thing that you will need to email to me. And then if any of your work samples, if like putting something online and sending us a link is challenging, you can, and that you are required to submit a work, for those of you who do have to submit a work sample, if you prefer to give us a video tape, I think we still have the technology to still be able to play those, but now we actually prefer DVDs and CDs. If you're going to submit something in hard form, you do have to drop that off or make sure we get it. And the guidelines go over the specifics about that. But we will need to make sure you've tested it that it can play on multiple players, because the only challenge that we have with those is that depending on what device you've been playing on, sometimes the equipment that we have may not be able to play what you send us. We will try to test it in advance so we can let you know if it doesn't work. But if you are submitting a work sample, the earlier you let us, you test that out and make sure that it works, the better. So, the new piece. I'm going to have Diana come in now and give you a little bit of information about that. And then I actually do have, okay.
I was trying to find it.
Well, you know what, we're going to need them for the future version.
Okay, we get copies. Okay. Hey everyone, hi. I would love to know who's in the room. I'll tell you who I am and just say some hello. There's a couple faces that at least look familiar from the arts community. I'm Diana Palchuk. I'm an artist. I'm a teaching artist. And I also work for the Office for Civil Rights. I'm the deputy manager of our city's Race and Social Justice Initiative. There are about 7 of us who are on the team there. And we're partnering with Office of Arts and Culture to do all kinds of work with arts and cultural organizations and artists, really supporting people's ability to focus on racial equity throughout the community, and really excited about that work. We're kicking off Friday right here in this building, the first of 3 cohorts with organizations who are going to be learning all about ways to really center communities of color in your work, and pretty excited about that. So I want to tell you about a piece that we're adding to the Civic Partners application. But first, I would love to hear who you all are, and if you are like me and need to stand a little, I welcome you to do that, because it's a long day. So could we start at this end? Would you mind kicking us off with who you are, what group you're with?
I'm Rosalind Woodhouse, and I am representing Antioch Ministry Incorporated.
Thank you.
I'm also on the same board.
Same group, okay. And what was your name?
I'm Brenda.
Brenda, nice to meet you.
I'm Marcia Andrews, and I'm bringing up the rear,
Good
representing
to meet you.
Antioch Ministry.
Great.
I'm Peyton Wardley. I'm filming the session,
The
and
office.
I intern for the Office of Arts and Culture on the Cultural Partnerships team of CAPI.
Cool.
I'm Saul Kovali.
Sure, my name is April. Good evening, everyone. I'm not sure that we're outfitted for this program, only because we're a math and science agency, and I don't believe that although we can participate in a way that we're hoping.
Maybe, yeah, maybe a
Yeah.
different fit.
I
Do you,
think
what kind of, who do you work with math and
The
science?
Back Academy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're thinking of maybe taking off or whatever makes sense for you, but very coincidentally, I have a friend who is a math and science, a STEM grant writer who's looking to do volunteer time. I don't know if you're ever looking for somebody, but that just popped into my mind. I can give you a card.
Yeah.
She's like, I really want to volunteer and do grant writing for math and science programs. So that might be a connection. I'll grab a card as we talk.
Thank you.
I'm Betty Jean Williamson. I'm the director of Beacon Arts from Beacon Hills.
Great to meet you.
And I'm Paul Ray. I work with Beacon Arts too, and I'm helping with some grant writing.
Awesome. Oh, great. Good to meet you.
Sherwood Sage with the Seattle Steve Korchman, chapter of the Barbershop Harmony Society, and I'm the grant coordinator.
Oh, nice to meet you. Cool.
And Julie Boringa, I'm on the board of the Seattle Classic Guitar Society.
Wow, it's so good to hear all these different types of groups. So I'll say, if you do feel like, whether you decide you're going to stay or not, if you start to move, I will start to grab my card and do it that way.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
You have to be in existence for 3 years doing this?
For this grant
You
program,
have to be 3 years.
like I said, we do have other grant funding programs.
Okay.
And if you know, if-
But,
Well, we've been in operation for the past 5 years, but doing math and science work.
and so what I would recommend is if there's, I mean, just out of curiosity, was there a specific program or that you were thinking in terms of applying for funding
Yes.
through the Arts Office?
Again, in the Senegal League.
what, I mean, because this is interesting. Sometimes, I mean, whilst we having maths and science, we do have cultural, African cultural truth that comes in. Let's say the choral player or the drummer to teach the kids, the history of the choral, the drum, kind of oral history. I don't know how is that related to
Because
this.
what I will say is that the program that I talked about at the beginning, Smart, and you might have come after, maybe after that, we have a program called Smart Ventures,
Okay.
which is for project funding. And and that one, it's for funding programs that are kind of outside the box of what we normally fund in our other funding programs. And it actually sounds like that project, when if you're focusing on drumming or more cultural history,
Yes.
that intersects with your organization, that might actually be perfectly qualified and fit into our Smart Ventures funding program. Did you pick up one of my cards?
Yes, I have.
Okay, great. If you email me, then I can connect you with the program manager who runs that program. And that's an ongoing funding deadline and one that's much more easily actually accessible than this one. And will probably be more geared for funding the projects that you came here for than this program would. Oh, and so I just handed out before. And yeah, it's sometimes it's nice because you can actually make connections with other people in the room for actually coming to a workshop that you might not otherwise. What I'm handing out now is, this is a demographic survey that we actually invite all of you to fill out, mostly because one of the things that we're trying to track at the city in terms of racial equity work is who is at the table, so that we know who we're not reaching and who we are reaching. It's completely anonymous, but it does ask some very specific demographic information. And I know some of the questions some people feel a little uncomfortable about, know that, you know, this actually, I literally take it back, it gets entered in a database, so I'm not even the one entering into the database, so just know that you can be really transparent, honest on this, but it really helps us in a lot of different ways know what our baseline is and where we need to do better and more intensive outreach. So I really encourage you, feel free to put it on that table so that, thanks.
Just on the zip code here, you asked for our personal zip code.
Oh.
So for example, I live in Snohomish County, but the organizations.
I would say for this grant workshop, that's a great question. In a lot of different situations, we're asking for the person's individual. For this one, I would say maybe the zip code might be for your organization, but everything else should be for you as a representative of your organization. Thank you. Okay.
Also, Kathy brought snacks over here, if
Oh, yeah.
anybody is interested.
And this is really important. We're not going to actually take a formal break, so if any time you need to leave, the restrooms are just outside the door to your left. And there is, you can either use tap water with the cups, or there is also a small water cooler here as well. I think maybe we can ask them if they have questions about that first.
We got a moment.
Can you go like this?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, you got it. Okay, that was quick. So, once again, I'm Diana. Feel free to just, if you have a question as I'm talking, hey Diana, that works. What I wanted to do is first share with you a little bit about what the Race and Social Justice Initiative is and why Office of Arts and Culture is doing this piece. So this little handout just has some images to kind of outline what this is. Have folks ever heard of the Race and Social Justice Initiative before? You familiar? A little bit? Okay, cool. So we're about 11 years old now. And we started primarily as an internal city government initiative to get our own house in order, really pushed by community in the mid to late 90s saying, you all gotta get your own house in order. And so we've been doing a lot of work internally. And in the last few years, we've started to more intentionally reach out to community partners and figure out, well, how can we really support community? Not just in the services that we deliver as a city, but in efforts that community is already engaged with. So this is part of that, is really thinking about what can our arts and cultural community contribute to the cultural shift that needs to happen to eliminate institutional racism. And so that's our vision for the Race and Social Justice Initiative, is that we achieve racial equity in our city and really everywhere, but we want to start with our city. And we do that by working internally within city government. We do that by changing our practices in the way we contract and the way we do outreach, and then also in partnering with the community and with other institutions and other governmental organizations. So we have a network called the Governing for Racial Equity Network, and it's jurisdictions in the Pacific Northwest that got together and said we want to do this together, and now there are satellites throughout the country within the last 2 years doing this work as government. Which is a really big step for government, because government is where it all began. Government set up the laws, government decided what police should do, and government now has a huge role to play in shifting that, as we all do. So if you flip over, it kind of stapled in a funky way, but this image, just for a little clarity, this may be kind of obvious stuff to folks in the room, But we really try to distinguish between equality and equity. We're an equity initiative. I'm curious if folks, somebody could share with us what that distinction is all about. What do y'all think? Equity versus equality, what's it about?
Well, equality is that everybody gets the same thing, and equity is that everyone gets what they need.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear. Anybody want to add anything to that? Yeah, that's what we're talking about. So we're not really concerned with everybody getting the same thing. We want to be equitable and be fair so that people get what they actually need to have access to the opportunities and outcomes that they need. We want people to have all that good stuff. And then just so folks are aware, we have some definitions that we developed as a city, and that's the last page of this handout, that help us to really distinguish what we're working on. So we make that distinction between individual level racism, which is, acts of discrimination, prejudice, and institutional systemic levels of racism. So when we're talking about institutional racism, we're talking about the policies, the practices, the procedures of organizations, of the city as an institution. Families are institutions. Places of faith and prayer are institutions. So the ways that our institutions are formed and the practices that we've developed, sometimes these are intentional. We have a long history in this country of practices that are intentional to harm, to exclude people of color. We also have practices that are not intentional, but the impact they have is one of exclusion, is one of great harm. And so when we talk about institutional racism, we're talking about the impact, what goes on as a result of the way we do things, not necessarily the intention behind it. And so what we want to address is the impact. And similarly, when we're talking about structural racism, we're talking about that racism that exists across institutions, across areas of equity. So, the way that our educational system interplays with the economic system or the transportation system, or the way that multiple institutions sometimes interact. So you can all think of the organizations that you partner with, right? So thinking about if you're part of a collaborative in any sense, how does that collaborative, the shared policies, the way that your different organizational policies interact, how does that impact communities of color? And we see patterns. We see patterns of racism, of institutional and structural racism throughout our community. And so that's what we're trying to address is the pattern. So we really believe fully that none of us in this room, or really any of us alive today, said, yeah, we want to do this thing and we want to cause a lot of harm to people. But we do believe that we all have roles to play in ending institutional and structural racism. So that's what this effort is about. And in order to do that with the arts and cultural community, Kathy has really been spearheading this effort for a number of years now. We're finally ready to make the change. What we want to do is start to find out where are arts and cultural organizations in their understanding of racial equity, in the kind of work they're doing to make that shift. Some groups are like, this is who we are, we already do this, it's part of our blood, this is our work. Other groups are saying, yeah, we really need to do this. Right, so we've got a wide range, we've got a wide spectrum of where groups are at. And what we want to do with this new round of Civic Partners is find out where everybody's at. So we've created a set of questions to help us do that. And it is scored in that your completion of those questions, your response to them will be scored. It's a total of 5 points. But you will not be judged on the content of your response. It's merely for us to get a sense of what's it like? What's going on, and then what services can we provide to actually help build racial equity and make that cultural shift that we so desperately need. So I'm going to pass out what these questions are. So
the questions are actually on that side of the racial equity statement.
oh, you've already passed them out.
Hey. On that side.
Love it. Okay, so you already have them. That's great. Make it easier. Awesome.
So on one side is our commitment to racial equity, and then the other side is the question.
The actual questions. Does everybody see them? Okay, good. Great. So, they're kind of long, multi-part, except for the first one, but we really want you to be thinking that's why they're designed this way. So that, I'm just gonna quickly go through these, share some thoughts about what we're hoping to get from them, and as we talk through them, please ask questions. It's a great time to ask questions, anything that comes up. So that first one, how does your organization reflect and engage the people and experiences of the racially diverse communities of our region? Who has some thoughts about what we're getting at there? What are we asking about?
For example,
Yeah.
who would be incorporated into your organization, volunteers or paid or whatever, that would be of other races?
What do you mean of other races?
Nationalities, blacks, Chinese.
So what are the racially diverse groups that are part of your organization?
Right.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so talking about that, right? And giving us a sense, before I came to the city, well, a number of years ago, 5, 6 years ago, I worked for an organization that was 14 staff and only 2 people of color. And this was a challenge for us. So we would, write grants, and we realized, okay, so how do we talk about where we're at with that reality, right? And what does that mean for us as an organization? And so it's asking that, it's kind of like, how does your organization reflect the diversity of our community and its staff and its board and your partners and your audience? But in addition to just sort of that reflecting piece, how are you engaging? What are your relationships like? What is that looking like for your group? And for some groups, it's like, again, this is who we are, this is what we do. There isn't a distinction. We don't make that distinction. And for others, you're in a different place. And so what we want to know is just where you're at. And we're asking for, like Kathy was saying earlier, transparency, be authentic, tell us your real story, because then what we can do is develop ways to support everybody where they're at, right? So if you've got awesome practices and you're like this awesome racially equitable organization, you may have stuff to teach other groups, and we may learn that and think, we want to ping you for that. Can we work with you in some way? So there are a lot of different possibilities there of that. Any other questions about this first one, or any questions about it? Yeah.
Well, it's not so much the question as it is the top part where it says, you just submit a 2-page document via email. What constitutes 2 pages? Is it the, certain font, spacing?
That's a good question. Usually in our guidelines, we, and that's actually helpful because we can actually update the sheet, yes. We didn't want to be too prescriptive, but in general, anything less than a 10 or 11 point font becomes really hard to read. Using your common sense. We just want to make sure that, again, as I talked about earlier, the fact that even though it's just Diane and I reading this part, if we're getting this from 200 some organizations, we didn't want them to go on and on forever. And at the same time, we want to kind of give you a guideline, because there's maybe some organizations, they might just write 1-sentence responses to each of these and think that they hit it, and that the 2 pages is kind of a rough guideline. So that's readable.
Yeah.
So, and then we're not having to use a magnifying glass to,
Yeah.
Question, so, our group's here on Beacon Hill, it's just a pretty diverse neighborhood, and we have certain things, which can easily focus in. But one of the questions, so we have some general events where the audience comes, but we've never counted the race of our audience. They are diverse, but should we be doing that? Should we? Yeah, I guess that's a question.
It's a really good question. So I think, we're not prescribing that right now. We're not saying that you need to ask your audience how they identify racially. But I think that's a really important thing to think about. Just like we pass out these anonymous cards at all of our city events, because we want to know, who are we actually serving? Where are our dollars going? We say we have a race and social justice initiative. Are we really serving enough people of color? How do we know? And for that, we can talk with you more about how would you go about doing that, because there are some great practices to support that, so that it, you would never tell people, you would never assign a race to somebody else,
I can show you
right?
some crowd pictures.
Right.
The crowd, see.
Right.
And the reality is again, that's some place to be transparent. We, through some of our different funding programs, we get really specific about some of these questions, and I've seen a wide range of responses. I've seen, like, some groups, they actually they track all this, they do marketing surveys and they track all this stuff, so they're able to report out, this percentage based on age and race and ethnicity. And then other groups, they're not able to get that specific, but they are able to, because they engage with the people that come to their events, so they know that ballpark what the representation might be, and they might not be able to go into specifics of 10% are African Americans, 5% are Asian Americans, but they might be able to go, we know that at least 20% of the people coming to our events represent communities of color, for instance. They might be able to get that specific, but not much more specific than that. Others, they'll say, we have a very diverse audience, and that's all they'll say. And I will say that's something that we have no idea if it's age or
right. What do you mean by diverse? Diverse in what way?
And so, and that even if you don't know, like, even if you've not gone to the point of like doing any kind of polling or asking people to kind of to self-identify or anything like that, if you're an arts organization that has any interest in being sustainable and viable, you have probably at least some interaction with the people coming to your events, and we'll have at least know that we do have. And this is where being transparent, like, we know that we have some people of color.
We're not asking what they are.
Right, but we know that we're not where we want to be yet. Like, some organizations will be really realistic and they'll say, like, we know that the neighborhood that we serve, the demographics of this neighborhood are 40%, people of color, and we know that our events were not reaching that mark yet, and we'd like to do better. Or we're doing the best, it's whatever is transparent for you and where you're at, right? And we are just, with some of the tools that we're trying to develop over the next few years is trying to find more of those best practices that arts organizations like yours are doing all over the country, and trying to make that available so that as we continue further in this work, I think more and more arts organizations have been coming to us over the last few months going, we really want to be able to figure out who it is we're serving, and they're looking for those kinds of tools. So as a community, we would love to hear what's working for organizations that are doing it well, and how we can use that to support organizations that want to be able to track that and don't know how to yet, but that's a whole evolving thing that we're all working on together.
Excuse me, I think you answered my question, but are there any resources that are available that will help organizations to reach out to the demographics that they're not, able to serve at that time, or how are we to identify that? I guess that's my question. I think it's an issue of concern for us, I know.
Yeah, so there are a couple resources at the city, and that's another thing that we are currently searching for more of. So we have something that we call the Inclusive Outreach and Public Engagement Guide, otherwise known as IOPE. Okay. But it's a set of best practices, right, that say, have you thought about doing it this way? Have you talked to people in this way? Do you have a plan that says this, this, and that? There are other resources out there, and we're in the process of gathering them, so we'll continue to make things available as we have access to them, as we get them. But I will also say that, so I work on a team, 2 of my staff members who I supervise are community organizers who are now working for the city, 2 young women of color, and they always say to the rest of our team, right, it's just about building relationships, you know what I mean? And there's something so beautiful and simple about that, about taking the time to get to know folks, inviting them to your house and going to their house, you know what I mean? Right. So some of the best practices that I've seen are kind of intuitive, right? Especially when it comes to inclusion. But we'll continue to make stuff